In 1881, John walks the streets of New York as he notices a mysterious man following him, so he does his best to sneak and shake him off. Then he stops at a store to send a telegram, choosing express because it is urgent. Sometime later, Edgar receives the telegram from his uncle, asking him to hurry and save him. After catching the train, Edgar arrives at John's house and meets with a lawyer who explains that John died unexpectedly and left everything to Edgar. His body has been placed inside a crypt that can only be opened from the inside. There is also an old diary that John left under strict instructions that only John may read it. After the lawyer leaves, Edgar begins to read the story that starts 13 years ago. After the Civil War in Arizona, John is a distinguished ex-captain of the Confederate Army searching for gold, although he hasn't found much yet. The local waiter has already cut him off for not paying his debts, and the tavern patrons try to throw him out. But John immediately fights them off and knocks them out before pointing his gun at the waiter. At that moment, a group of soldiers arrives to arrest him, and John tries to resist, only to be knocked out and wake up later for an interrogation. After waking up in front of Colonel Powell, John continues to try to start a fight, and doesn't stop until he's thrown into a cell. Powell wants John to join them to fight against the Apaches, but John has had enough and doesn't want to fight anymore. Powell responds by knocking him out again, and John spends a few hours dreaming of his dead family. When he wakes, John urinates in the cell to get the guards' attention, knocking him out when he approaches and stealing his keys. Then John escapes riding Powell's horse. Soon the cavalry is after him, only to find him talking to a mounted Apache war party. Both sides are armed and suspicious, and a shootout in different languages begins, triggering a fight. John uses the opportunity to flee, but Powell is wounded and John decides to help him. The duo escapes to a canyon and discovers a small cave, and the Apaches pursuing them stop when they see a symbol on a rock above the cave. Then they flee. Curious, John approaches the symbol and discovers the spider emblem he has been seeing during his search for gold. Leaving Powell behind, John ventures deeper to explore and discovers a room with strange symbols and gold-covered walls. Suddenly, a Thern appears behind him and attacks, but after exchanging some blows, John grabs his gun and shoots the man, who has a glowing medallion in his hand. The man dies whispering some words, and John repeats them as he grabs the medallion, suddenly teleporting him out of the cave. Now John finds himself in the middle of a strange desert. He tries to get up, but walking is extremely difficult, taking several attempts. It is shocking to see how his steps are almost floating, and after throwing the medallion away in frustration, John begins to move properly, discovering that his leaps now cover great distances. He doesn't know it, but he is on Mars, and the lower gravity allows him to do these things. Then, John reaches the top of a hill and discovers a nest of eggs hatching green newborns with 6 limbs. At that moment, a swarm of Tharks approaches, riding giant creatures and armed with weapons. The leader Tharks finds the medallion and attacks John while the others open fire, but John escapes with a great leap. Impressed with his skills, Tharks orders the shooting to stop and approaches John again, this time showing that he comes in peace. They try to communicate, but the language barrier leads Tharks to think that John's name is Virginia, his hometown. Tharks wants to see John leap again, but John responds by trying to steal Tharkas's weapons. However, the Tharks quickly counterattack and capture him, taking him to their tribe along with the babies. Meanwhile, in Helium, Princess Deja is preparing a speech about her latest invention. She is suddenly interrupted by her father, King Tardos, and his council, who are discussing the latest attacks from Zodanga made with some new shiny weapon. Deja intervenes and explains that she has made a device that can harvest that blue light, which she calls Nona light. She tries to demonstrate how it works, when a council member touches her and secretly gives it a jolt to break it, making it seem that Deja has failed. Tardos dismisses his council and informs Deja that the only way to stop the war is to marry Sabthan, which deeply distresses her. The king ignores her pleas and orders his people to start arranging the wedding while, outside, the council member who broke the machine reveals his true face. He is a Thern who is spying using his shape-shifting powers. Back to John, he watches the Tharks in the city with fascination, especially as they start fighting over the babies. Tharks orders them to let a girl named Sola have a baby for herself while Hajus tries to kill John, but Tharks immediately pushes him away because he doesn't have anyone's support. Tharks then asks John to jump, but John still refuses to cooperate and is sent to a cave with the babies, where he is chained. Sola visits him and shares a special drink that makes John understand her language before he passes out. John wakes up again in the middle of the night and is terrified to see Woola, a dog-like alien who quickly becomes his friend. Then John fights against the chains and manages to break free, but Woola follows him. No matter how far John goes, Woola appears instantly at his side in seconds. Desperate to find the medallion, John follows some noises and finds a Thark party which Woola interrupts. The Tharks begin to attack it, so John leaps to help stop them, accidentally killing a Thark and proving his jumping ability. The Tharks immediately take him down, and when John demonstrates understanding of their language, everyone realizes that Sola has been interfering. In the morning, John is tied to a rock and has to watch as Sola is marked for her mistake once again, and Tharks announces that next time she will be killed because her skin has no room for more marks. This makes John think of his relationship with his own family. Suddenly, the Tharks notice battleships fighting in the sky and rush to seek shelter so they can watch the battle safely. In the sky, Sabthan uses his powers to attack the enemy ship and board it, but Deja disguises herself as a soldier and tries to divert the ship. Unfortunately, the ship is hit and loses control, causing Deja to almost fall and cling to the edge. John sees her and, believing she is human, uses a long jump to save her. As the ships land, John tells Deja to let him fight, but she reveals that she is also a warrior, and together they fight in sync against soldiers from both armies. John leaps onto one of the ships and uses the cannon to shoot at other enemies, making them collide. Then, Sabthan comes after John, and they engage in a furious fight that Sabthan quickly wins. When he is about to kill John, the Tharks begin shooting at the ships, allowing John to leap as the last ships flee. After this, the Tharks accept John as their warrior and consider John their right-hand man, which makes Hajus furious. John wants to refuse because he doesn't want to fight, but Tharks threatens Deja, and John is forced to accept the honor. Then the Tharks go to loot the fallen ships, while Deja demonstrates curiosity about John's ability. She wants him to teach her his skill, but he reminds her that it's not for sale. When Deja suddenly mentions the lack of seas on this planet, she and John exchange their knowledge, and John finally realizes he is on Mars. Deja is unsure if she believes him, and John explains that he was brought here by the medallion, making Deja think he might be a Thern. Seeking answers, Deja takes John to the temple of the goddess, ignoring Sola's warning that it is forbidden to enter. Deja examines some symbols that speak of a gate and promises to take John there so he can return to Earth as payment for saving her. Unfortunately, they are interrupted by Tharks and his men, who arrest them for breaking the rules. Tharks is furious with John for putting Sola in trouble because she will die, and John finally realizes that Sola is Tharks' daughter. Tharks punches him for this, and explains that the Tharks have no concept of personal children before taking the trio to his tent, pretending that he will punish them. However, Tharks returns the medallion and tells them to flee. When Hajus starts to get suspicious and enters the tent, the trio has already left, and Tharks is accused of treachery. The group begins to walk across Mars with Woola following them, and John is shocked to see how much damage Sabthan has caused. They have to cross furious sandstorms and hide from the warships, but some days later, Sola realizes that Deja is not taking them to the gate. When confronted, Deja reveals she is taking them to Helium so they can help her people, angering John and causing him to decide to leave her behind. Pleading and begging, Deja falls to her knees and explains that she is a princess who doesn't want to lose her freedom to the enemy. She also admits that the gate doesn't exist. John takes her back but still believes that the cave that brought him here is real. Meanwhile, Shang receives news about Deja's whereabouts and organizes a plan to go after her. Moments later, the trio reaches a pilgrimage river where individuals who have sinned encase things in the waters to reach paradise. Sola wants to join them, but John immediately stops her, saying that to honor her father, she must follow her duty and help him. The trio takes a boat down the river, leaving Woola behind, and eventually discovers a strange structure that Deja has never seen before. John takes her to the top with a leap, and the medallion begins to glow, activating the entire structure and confirming that these are machines. A hole opens and the duo enters, where Deja uses the medallion to activate a diagram of the solar system. The blue light is the Nona light she had been studying and has the shape of the spider John saw in the cave. It turns out that John's presence here is the result of a replica of him being transmitted from Earth to Mars. Deja realizes that Sabthan is receiving help from the Therns and finally believes that John is from Earth. In order to continue studying this, She needs to take John back to Helium, and to convince him, she kisses him, making John think of his dead wife. At that moment, an army of Tharks arrives with Shang pretending to be one of them. John immediately grabs Deja, and they jump back into the boat in order to navigate and rejoin Woola. The Tharks immediately begin to pursue them, and John starts thinking about the moment he returned home and found his house destroyed and his family dead. Not wanting to lose any more people, John tells the girl to flee while he stays to fight with Woola's help. A fierce battle begins, and fueled by the tragedy of his family, John truly gains the upper hand, defeating warriors left and right. However, at that moment, a warship from Helium arrives and puts an end to the battle. Tardos reunites with his daughter and reveals that he is with Sab Thon, who is pretending to have come in peace and only cares about the princess. To prove this, he hands over his sword to Deja, which she almost uses to kill him, but in the end accepts the marriage for the good of her people. As the ship takes everyone away, including John, it is revealed that Woola and Sola were hiding underground. Hours later, John wakes up inside a room and finds himself surrounded by Zodanga guards. He is suddenly visited by one of Deja's soldiers, who asks him to pretend he is keeping him as a hostage. John plays along, and, after taking down a few guards, they manage to exit, where the guard tells him to jump into a specific tower. They reach Deja's chamber, and once the couple is left alone, Deja asks John to fight for her people. John says no, so Deja returns the medallion to him and teaches him the words to use it. John begins to repeat the words, but suddenly the guards enter the room. When Deja turns around, John is no longer there, so she leaves assuming he went home. However, John is hidden in the ceiling, and as he passes through a corridor to escape, he is stopped by Shang in disguise. Shang takes John away in a carriage and reveals he knows a lot about Earth before taking on a new disguise so they can watch the wedding procession. It is revealed that Deja will die after the wedding, so Shang explains that Tharks are ancient immortal creatures that exist on many planets, including Earth, and always control the course of history. Shang takes John to a hangar intending to take him away into the air, but at that moment, Woola appears and bites Shang, freeing John. After regaining the medallion, John steals a light flyer and begins to pilot it clumsily, nearly crashing several times. A guard is chasing him, but when he leaves the city, Sola takes down the pursuer and John lands safely on the sand. John cannot save Deja alone, so he must return to the Tharks for help. Sola says that her people do not fly, but John forces her to come back with him. When they arrive at the village, they are immediately captured because Hajus is in charge now. When they are thrown into a cell, they discover that Tarkus has also been locked up. Tarkus is furious to hear that Sola has returned, but has no strength to kill John because he lost a battle in the Colosseum. Moments later, John and Tarkus are thrown into the Colosseum and forced to fight against two giant white beasts. Sola cannot bear to watch a massacre and jumps in too, running to her father's side. John cannot jump because he is chained, but after dodging several blows from the creatures, he manages to break free of the chain and uses the stone at the end to kill one of the beasts. Then he grabs a sword that Tarkus throws to him, and when the second beast leaps at him, John immediately kills it, earning the crowd's respect. Afterward, John challenges Hajus, who tries to say no, but the crowd reminds him of the rules. Hajus leaps to attack, but John quickly cuts off his head. Everyone celebrates his victory, and when he offers a speech asking for warriors to save the planet, the crowd is eager to follow him into battle. As the wedding ceremony begins, John leads the Tharks to Zodanga, only to find the city empty because the wedding is taking place in Helium. Tarkus slaps John for his mistake, pointing out that they can't get there in time and that his people do not fly. Disappointed, John leaves alone in a light flyer. Moments later, John safely enters Helium, thanks to the light flyer that makes him appear as a local. Just as Deja is about to become Sabthon's wife, John bursts through the window and interrupts the wedding. Sabthon immediately sends a signal to call his army and escapes, dragging Deja with him. A fierce battle begins between Zodangans and Helium in the streets and inside the temple. While Deja strikes Sabthon to make him let her go, then she is saved by John. Then the couple joins the battle, and John confronts Sabthon in hand-to-hand combat. It seems that the villain is about to win the fight, but suddenly a ship crashes into the temple, revealing that the Tharks have finally agreed to fly. With the Tharks and Helium working together, they can finally dominate the Zodangans, while John leaps onto Sabthon, managing to rip his arm off and demanding information. However, the blue light returns to Sabthan's body and kills him before he can speak, and the light begins to affect John too. Nearby, Shang is controlling the light while disguised as a Thark, but is interrupted by Deja's sword. Shang transforms into Deja to distract her, and when John approaches them, the false Deja uses the distraction to push Deja away, who seizes the chance to escape through the window. Tarkus finds the medallion on the ground, and, as he picks it up, John tries to plead for it. But at that moment the real John appears, and he and Tarkus attack the disguised Shang, who immediately disappears. The battle comes to an end, and everyone celebrates the newly found peace. Seeing that things are ready for a wedding anyway, John takes his old wedding ring and asks Deja to marry him. Deja accepts, and the crowd celebrates with a feast. After the wedding night, John goes to the balcony to breathe some fresh air and throws the medallion away, accepting that he is now John of Mars. He suddenly encounters a guard who turns out to be Shang, who immediately touches John and sends him back to Earth. John wakes up in the cave and many years have passed. Powell is already dead. He tries to use the words about the spider on the rock, but they don't work. Back in the present, Edgar finishes reading the story. For years, John sought a new medallion that could take him back to Mars, and after much work, he finds something in the Orkneys, but he knew that the Tharns were still following him in disguise. That is when he decides to make a plan. He pretends to be sick and, using a special poison, makes his body seem as if it were dead, so that he would be taken to the crypt, leaving special instructions for only Edgar to know the truth. Shocked and worried, Edgar rushes to the crypt and uses the keywords from the telegram to open it again, only to find it empty. At that moment, a Tharn appears behind him, but before he can attack, he is killed with a shot. Then John comes out of hiding and explains that he has been using Edgar as bait to catch the Tharn, but the rest of the plan remains the same. He takes a Tharn's medallion and asks Edgar to protect his body before entering the crypt, sealing it forever. Then John says the words to finally return to Mars.